Hi, James. How are you today?
I'm fine, Geraldine, and you?
Very well, very well. Good to see you.
Yeah. So, what are we going to cover today then?
Last time we talked a little bit about the idea of moving to a different country and kind of how that can be a big shock to the system. But there's always more to talk about on that whole subject of moving around the world, and lots of people are in transit today. Something that maybe doesn't occur to people is when they are actually trying to move back home or back where they came from before. I've done that now, I think, 3 times, coming back to
Yeah,
places,
same as
maybe
me.
maybe even 4
The
actually.
same 3 times. Yeah. Go on.
Um, and I've actually noticed an interesting thing about moving back to where you were before. That I did it twice when I was a kid, and I did it once as an adult coming back here to Ireland. That we have maybe even a tougher time with what I call reverse culture shock compared to culture shock. Culture shock being when you are going outward bound from wherever you're currently living and you're going off to some new and exciting destination, and you know it's going to be different, but you're not exactly sure what you'll find, but you're up for the adventure. And lo and behold, it usually is different from what you imagined, but it's exciting nonetheless because there's something there. But when you are coming back to the place where you were from, I have found that that actually causes a longer kind of a more sustained shock period for people. And it usually takes people by great surprise. So it's a really important topic that I think, especially these days with people who are so mobile, and I know you and I have talked a little bit about the laptop lifestyle and people who are kind of mobile with their laptop and work and
Mm.
moving across the country, across the globe, really to different countries. That this is an important thing, I think, from both an emotional and I guess, career-wise standpoint for people to think about the effects of reverse culture shock and what that can actually mean for them in a real tangible way, and how to cope with that, I guess, so that they can still have a successful transition period and move back to wherever they're coming from.
I noticed when I lived in Spain for 10 years, I was in the Spanish culture. I speak Spanish. A lot of British, I noticed, because I used to sell properties to British relocating. And within 2 years, a lot of the British, the dream had gone because they didn't know how to integrate and they weren't speaking Spanish. And so therefore they were thinking, you know what, this isn't as I added up, as I thought. And
Okay,
so they are kind of like thinking, I've got to go back to the UK, right? This is not
right.
for everyone, but a lot of British, and I noticed that. In my case, I was there for years. It wasn't that I was 2 years and I want to get back.
How many how
So
many years? Can you say again?
10,
Sorry.
10, 10 years, a
10
decade in
years.
Spain, in
Okay.
Valencia, eastern Spain. Beautiful place. And well, at the time, the Spanish economy was terrible. 25% unemployment. My wife was, she's Spanish, and they weren't paying her for months. The government, the local government had gone bankrupt. For
Oof.
various reasons, we came back to the UK and for our daughter's education as well. Sometimes it's for family reasons as well, not just economic. So when I came back in my head, although I've done this before, because I've lived in Australia and I came back, in my head I thought, oh right, I'll go back into what I was doing before, which was IT sales. So I left 10 years prior in a very good job as an account manager or account director in a big American company in IT sales. So I thought, well, I can always go back and get the job and so on. And of course, a bit of a shock, culture shock. First, get back to the UK, I was kind of like half Spanish in my ways after 10 years, right? Because I
Eating
speak
at nine
Spanish,
o'clock at night.
eating at 9, and the rhythm of Spain is different from over here. Whether you're living in Italy, Portugal, and you want to come back, you still got the rhythm of your country that you've been living in for some time. And so that was, and then when I came back, there was a gap in business in Spain. I was in IT sales, and of course, that's really what I wanted to go back to in the UK. And it was a shock. So I was open-minded, very positive, came back to the UK, and I went to see various companies that said, you know what, there's been a gap of 10 years and I'm looking for recent experience. Even though I had a lot of experience in sales, account management, negotiations and stuff like that. Or they said you are overqualified, which meant I was older, right? So when I left for Spain, I was managing people in their 30s. And I moved to Spain and came back. I ended up working for some 30s. Right now, that was a shock, and I had to lower my ego. Got dented. And I had to kind of lower my expectations to get into the system. Did I
Right.
get back into IT sales? Yes, I did. I worked for a big IT laptop manufacturer, but I had to lower my expectations in order to get into the system. So there are people who are thinking they're going to come back with a certain expectation of a few years back, and they may have to reduce those expectations and be flexible.
Yes. Yep.
That's my tip to people. I'm not saying be negative. I'm saying be open-minded. You may get the job you had years prior, but also realize that things change, countries change, work situations change as well.
Definitely. Definitely. And yeah, no, I think it's an incredibly important point, really good point. And, you know, that dent in the ego can also mean just a drop in confidence, right? So it's really important to not mix the two. You know, and it's very hard. I think the hardest thing in the world is to search for a job, right? It's such a tough thing to do. And it doesn't matter who we are and how experienced we are. It's just a sort of a trail full of rejection until you get the one job, right? So it's a tough thing. And it's especially tough if you come in thinking, you know, hey, I have all of this experience. Why are they, you know, I could do that job much better for them. I could help them reach their goals faster than if they were to hire somebody who has half the experience for a lot less money. But the reality is that maybe they don't have the money to spend. And maybe they don't want to have somebody with that much experience tell them what to do because it might feel like a threat. So, you know, you're no longer sort of calling the shots when you are actually coming back to your own country, because you're jumping back into a river that's been flowing along without you for all the time you've been gone. So as you're saying, you do have to be flexible. I know when we moved back from the US to Ireland, one of the things that was very attractive for us, one of the reasons we moved back here and not somewhere else, was because they did a really good job of marketing the business-friendly atmosphere here and the culture for startups. And actually what we discovered was, compared to where we had been, it's a tenth of the culture. And so, you know, inevitably we found ourselves looking for jobs and looking for ways to get into that system. But we found that the startups that are here, they're not startups the same way that they are in the US. It's not that they're looking for staff. It's one guy with his idea, you know, and he can't necessarily afford to hire anybody because he's busy just trying to raise some money or something like that. So, you know, it's a lot different kind of scene. So we had to lower our expectations too, and just get in the swim and start something, find something where there was a gap and start something. So I did end up starting something very small. I didn't expect it to really do anything, but actually 4 years later, it has now been an incredible side business for me, because in addition to now, you know, full-time income, I've got this seasonal income that spikes anytime I need to pay for. I've had to pay for 2 operations for my son. I've got to pay for school fees for him, for a study abroad year for him, and as well as just kind of taking care of some, you know, bills and debts and things like that from the move. So, I mean, having a little extra income and small business that we were able to create has been great, but it was not at all what we expected it to be when we moved here. So, you know, even my husband had to go back to school to retrain, because even though he could do his job with his eyes closed and had been doing that for multiple kinds of businesses, he didn't have the piece of paper that is recognized here in Europe, and therefore he was at the bottom of the ladder as far as they were concerned. So he decided to go back to school and retrain for a career that he really much preferred anyway, and instantly got a 50% raise over where he was working when he got out of school a year later. So it just goes to show you have to do things sometimes that you don't really expect you need to do, but if you are flexible, it will definitely pay off. But that reverse culture shock is something. It can really it can really drag out and drag people down if they're not careful, because it shouldn't have to get to your ego, but sometimes it does, right?
Yeah, it took me about 8 months to come back and adjust to the UK. Even though I'm from England, it took me about 8 months, if I remember. But the good news is I'm now doing the work that I really love doing, which is business coaching. I'm coaching people from around the world, and I can take this. It's a portable business. I can coach anywhere, be it Spain here or America or wherever. So I eventually got what I wanted, but initially it was painful to plug back into the country of origin, even though I'm English and stuff like that. But as I say, my thought process has changed after a number of years in Spain.
That's right.
So I guess if anyone, if there's any takeaways for people, is have an open mind, be patient with the process of changing back to your original country, be willing to lower your expectations if you have to, right? But just stay open and have a patient attitude, because it is going to take a number of months to adjust back. And sometimes it's also getting support as well, asking a friend or a coach or someone to support you through that transition.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts? What are your tips?
Growth can be painful, but we are also in charge of how much pain we're willing to inflict upon ourselves and others, right? So we can choose our attitude daily about how we perceive that. So it's really important to, as you say, one of the best things to do is to ask for help. And in fact, when we really, really needed to ask for help, we did ask for help, and my husband was able to actually go back to school for free and get a degree worth, to us in our old country, it would have cost us probably $30,000 just to get him that degree. And we were able to ask for the help, and he retrained and was able to get on a much different and better track for all of our sakes, so, but he had to be willing to ask for that help in order to get there. So, yeah.
So I guess for people watching this video, people think, well, what are we about? Well, we're kind of coaches, trainers. We give on online courses. And so for people who are interested to design their life or redesign their life, then we have a website, which is richlifedesign.com. Yes, that's
right.
the name of the website. Yeah.
Yep.
So we're obviously in the process of building up some content for it. But basically, a lot of what I do in terms of work is helping people through transitions and transformations. So everyone's into change. Technology is speeding up the whole thing up, and so we all need support. So this is where coaching, that we offer, is something that we can offer through our courses or coaching or these videos to give them some tips.
Exactly. And if people would like to subscribe to the videos, we have a YouTube channel as well, which is Rich Life by Design on YouTube, and richlifedesign.com will have some coming courses and things for you all to help you in any kind of life transition, whether that's a career transition, which is what we especially are good at in terms of business and career, but also life design. So having a rich life isn't just about money, it's about having a life that's fulfilling, right? So that's the premise, and it's great to talk to you as always, James. And
thanks, Shirley.
Yeah, and we'll see you soon.
See you on the next one. See you on the next one. Thank you.
Good. Okay.